You are listening to the Two and Out CFL podcast, a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network.
Grab some poutine and a double-double. It's time for the Two and Out CFL podcast.
He's got it! Oh, baby!
Every week, Travis Currah.
That's Grey Cup me, which is a different person.
And Brazilian Ty.
Hunters are people too.
Talk fantasy football, bring you the latest in CFL news, and sprinkle in a little bit of nonsense.
Oh, nearly intercepted, and it's over!
Ready, set, hunt!
Welcome to the Week 3 preview of the CFL season with Travis Currah and Brazilian Ty on the Two and Out CFL podcast. I'm rocking the Tribal Chief shirt today. It's funny, Ty asked me, do you have anything in your closet other than CFL and wrestling shirts? And I do have a Martin Brodeur jersey. I do have Metallica shirts. That's about it.
No Megadeth?
I did. That I might have worn that one out though. I think I bought that shirt in the 12th grade or something like that.
Many moons ago.
Man, the rule is like if the lettering is all beat up, it's still good, but as soon as I start to get the armpit holes, then the shirt.
Oh,
goes.
that's your line?
That's my line. Yeah.
My line is if I look like Philadelphia Collins. But you're looking at my gut for then I give it another couple months to see if I can lose some weight, and then it just inevitably gets thrown into a bag and donated.
And then that couple months becomes a couple years, and
then I have surgery. And...
You got to show off that Tim Tebow jersey, though.
It is legit.
The Florida Gators. Wow.
They won the semifinal today. They're off to the College World Series on the weekend, so we're up the boys. If
that's not worth going on YouTube and checking out Two and Out on there for, I don't know what is worth going on.
It's a little tight.
And and then we could watch the progression of the mustache growing back in.
Mm-hmm. This is, I guess, when did I shave?
It was, I think, exactly a week ago.
I think so. So, here we are.
You're doing pretty good. Putting the chicken manure under the lip so it helps it grow a little bit. And
making chicken salad out of.
Week 3 starts in Winnipeg. The 2-0 Bombers taking on the 2-0 Lions, where the Bombers are 6-point favorites. The over-under at 49. I think I would, if I'm a betting man, and Ty is a betting man, I think the over feels like a pretty safe one.
Yeah.
Which means it'll be a 7-4 game.
Yeah, which means it'll be terrible. Winnipeg's defense is really good, but at 49 points, when you expect Winnipeg to put up 30 to 35, to give up 15 to 20 points, it's kind of right around where you expect Winnipeg to be, because if they give that up, I mean, they're winning that football game 90% of the time. So I don't see it staying under. Both these offenses are pretty powerful. Winnipeg's defense is what they'll make a couple stops to not let BC win the football game, I think. But I think we're looking at 60, 65 points.
And I don't think we've seen the best of the Lions offense just quite yet. They can be better. They will have better games this season. Is this the game that it will happen? We will see. The back end in Winnipeg, they've got some injuries going into this week. Even on the defensive line, Jackson Jeffcoat not going to be playing. Demario Houston not playing. He's out for personal reasons. Abu Darame Saray is going to make his debut at boundary corner in place of Demario Houston. That is an important part of the defense.
And he's had a hot start. He's made many plays.
He has. So we got a guy making his CFL debut. Hey, he's on the roster in Winnipeg for a reason.
Still got to pick on him.
Yeah.
If you're Vernon Adams.
Yeah, and the Lions might be picking on him early. Dom Rhymes won't be available for them, but Lucky Whitehead is against his former team. They might be looking Lucky's way early and often, Ty.
The only issue is that not a huge sample size against Winnipeg. He's only got 1.2 points, and I think that was a game he got hurt in.
Okay.
But overall, throughout his career, it's been 12.6 points per game. fantasy wise. Isn't this way better now that I have stats?
It is way better.
This is so much better. And him being the de facto number one this week with no Dom Rhymes, I think he's gonna get a lot of targets.
Yeah, and last week, Eberhardt making his debut on the Lions roster. He was playing wide receiver. They've moved him to slot back now.
Hopefully, he doesn't drop another for sure touchdown pass.
Yeah. I think he's an intriguing pick. I actually had my mouse circled over Justin McInnis. He might be an intriguing option in the Lions offense. But I'm going to roll with Alexander Hollins again. He's basically on the cusp of double-digit points in both of the first two games this year. It just looks like it might just be another shootout in the air, and the Lions are going to have success getting all those receivers involved.
Well, I think you look at Lucky Whitehead coming back, and you lose Dom Rhymes, but you still have that number one guy there that is going to attract a lot of attention. So it could open up for Eberhardt and Hollins and McInnis. They're not going to have, the number one matchups. It's kind of like, a third line player putting up numbers. Like, well, you're playing against the worst pairing defense usually. But that being said, Winnipeg's secondary, with Houston out, it's a little banged up. But I mean, how quick that front seven can get to the quarterback will probably make up for those deficiencies in the secondary. But I think it's going to be a shootout. But Winnipeg's defense will make those stops, and I think it's still a 10-point game. I don't think it's going to be trading touchdowns back and forth and its last possession wins.
I guess just saying that Saskatchewan had success through the air against Winnipeg.
409 yards worth.
Yeah, so I think that BC is able to do something like that here, and I don't have them.
But Winnipeg did come and make those stops in the fourth quarter and made it so that Saskatchewan it was a shootout, but it wasn't.
Now, when I choose a running back this year, I just want to be sure about the usage.
Yeah.
And I think that's the toughest thing.
I want to know why Andrew Harris is over $9,000 when he gets 4 carries.
Yeah. So far this year, Taquan Mizell, he's a newcomer to the starting lineup for the Lions, has double-digit fantasy points both weeks, double-digit carries both weeks, 93 yards in week 1, 116 yards in week 2. He had 3 catches in week 1, 4 catches in week 2. It just seems like they're going to continue using this guy in the BC offense. And if you can fit him in, he seems like an all right option, even though against that tough Winnipeg front.
Well, with no Jackson Jeffcoat, that opens up a little bit of room for the running game. And having Mizell back there doing what he's doing has opened up more offensive opportunities for Vern Adams Jr., whether it's him being able to scramble, the play action, because teams have to respect the run when you are that good at rushing the football this early in the season. It's not like Hamilton years ago where it's nobody cares. Or the last couple of years, I should say, where nobody cared. You could sell out on pass. So I don't think usage will be the problem. I think it'll just be production because of how staunch that defense can be.
Speaking of that Winnipeg defense, Adam Bighill is 7 tackles away from a milestone as he continues to move up the all-time tackles leader list in the CFL. He is 7 tackles away from matching Solomon Elimimian, his old teammate in BC. They formed Team 100 once upon a time. What a great linebacking duo. So Adam Bighill could move up the list, playing his old BC Lions team as well. That would be pretty cool to see him. We are watching greatness on the field, I think, every time we watch Adam Bighill play.
Yeah, it's almost like a cheat code.
Yeah.
Right?
Especially when the short yardage plays and he comes over, he's a beast.
The timing, the physicality, everything just works. He rarely gets burned by anything, and that's experience and that's learning the tricks of the trade. And he knows he's played against Colaros a bunch, Trevor Harris a bunch, Cody Fajardo enough, Jake Mayer enough, well, a little bit, Bo Levi Mitchell. you need to be able to switch up cadences and stuff, because these guys, the longer they're in the league, the more patterns they start to notice, and they're able to time stuff up. And Adam Bighill's a prime example of that.
We talk about running back usage, and early on this season, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers have been they've been using Brady Oliveira. He had over 24 fantasy points against Hamilton in week 1, 22 carries. Wow. But week 2 against Saskatchewan, he does have 10 carries, the 1 catch, but gets injured. And they're calling him a game time decision for this week. It's a thorax injury. I kind of feel like
it's Danny DeVito.
and the fact that he hasn't practiced, I think it means we're probably not going to see him, and we could be seeing a whole lot of Johnny Augustine, who is a value play on CFL Fantasy. He's 5K on there, which is awesome. He ended up getting 6 carries against Saskatchewan last week, 31 yards. If he's going to get 5 yards,
he's a really good receiver coming out of that backfield as well.
Yes, and if he's going to get 5 yards a carry, I'm going to be happy to have that in my lineup, Ty.
Pushing my chips almost all the way in.
Yeah. And then, you know what? If I look at, this is actually pretty interesting. The BC Lions so far this season, now the teams they've played, Calgary and Edmonton, didn't run that much against them, but BC is actually giving up 6 yards a carry so far. That is good enough for last in the CFL. Will the Bombers take advantage of that this week? It does seem like they do want to run the ball, and they might run it right at the Lions.
Which, I mean, when these teams and their coaching staffs know all these stats too. So it's no secret. We're not breaking any news here. I think that's been Winnipeg's MO, where they are able to set up stuff off the run. And if the run isn't working and they're only getting 2 or 3 yards, they're still converting those second downs.
Yeah.
Which is wild. So it's not that much of a detriment like it is to other teams when they can't get it going. But with the O-line Winnipeg has, whether it's Oliveira, I doubt he'll play, or Augustine, like these guys are still able to get a lot of yards per carry. I mean, they might not stick with it all game, carry wise, but the averages are there to where, if it's working early and they're moving the ball down the field and they're able to get up, put points up, and they're probably not going to go away from it.
That's the phenomenal thing here. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers have put up 40 points or more in both of their first 2 games. Zach Collaros has actually had almost identical fantasy games. In week 1, he had 26.6 points, and then week 2, 26.7 points, 3 touchdown passes in each of his first 2 games.
Wow.
The Lions,
3 touchdown passes in 1 quarter in week 1.
Yeah. So the Lions defense, I don't know if they've been tested all that much yet this season. Here is the test against the high-flying Blue Bomber offense, Ty.
100%. I think, I would call Taylor Cornelius a test just because of how much Edmonton had to throw the ball and how much they did. But true. It was like a multiple choice with only one choice.
Yeah. Dalton Schoen is listed as questionable, but he was also listed as questionable last week, so I'm not too worried about him. But again, I would have picked Dominic Rhymes in this game, but he's not playing. It's too bad. Either way, I'm looking forward to Thursday night football in Winnipeg. I think another key for the Lions, test that special teams out. Last year they struggled returning and limiting returns. Janarian Grant had their number in 2022. We saw the return he pulled off against Saskatchewan last week.
Do not punt to Janarian Grant if you can help it at all.
Yes.
If you have the chance to get it inside the 15 and out of bounds, you have to do it.
100%. Hamilton's home opener is against the Montreal Alouettes, and the Ticats here are actual favorites. 2.5 points, the over-under set at 44. I find this Ty, a very intriguing game because Bo Levi Mitchell's not playing. He ended up leaving the Toronto game with an injury.
Which probably benefits Hamilton more than Montreal.
No, they did say that Bo's going to dress. He's just not going to play, which I find weird. They also said they don't know how long he's going to be out. My guess is it can't be long if they're going to put equipment on him. So I don't think Bo's going to be out
also
long.
Shows a lack of depth at quarterback in that organization that they have to dress a injured Bo Levi Mitchell to back up Matthew Schultz.
And I actually think Matthew Schultz is actually pretty intriguing here.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have the guts to pick him, but
the games aren't here yet.
That's true. The week is young. When he came in last week against Toronto, I realized the situation and the point of the game, but he was 13 of 14, 118 yards and a touchdown. If he's going to be able to do half of that or have, a pretty good completion percentage, Schultz is a threat with his legs too.
Mm-hmm.
He might be an interesting pick, I think, this week for the Ticats. And he playing his old team, I think Schultz will be fired up.
I think so too. The way that he came in, yes, it was a little bit of garbage time, maybe some smoke and mirrors. But even just the way that he played, there wasn't a lot of stupid decisions. He made the right decision, threw it to the right spot, threw the right guy. They were able to run the same play back to back.
Yeah.
A touchdown and 2-point convert. This team needs something because starting off 0-2, Bo has not looked good. Yes, you paid him to be your starter, but how long can you trot him out there in a division that is easily winnable at 500? Or maybe not winnable at 500, but you're in a playoff spot at playing 500 football. And you're dropping the first two games. You want to go to 0-4 and take that chance, 0-3, 0-5. Like, it had to be done. And if Schultz wins, I don't know how you go back to Bo.
Wow. I think they will go back to Bo.
Yeah, but okay, so then you go back to Bo and Bo loses again next week. Now what?
That's an interesting proposition, man. If Bo goes to Hamilton, they roll out the red carpet and he ends up riding the bench for most of the year. We're living in the Twilight Zone, brother.
Oh, what a jam.
Golden Earring, the pride of the Netherlands, I think, if my geography is
Hey,
correct.
if you ain't Dutch, you ain't much.
I wanted to maybe talk about Montreal's defense here because this is almost like being week one. What are we going to get from them? And I only say that, and I don't want to be too disrespectful to Ottawa Red Blacks fans, but that was Ottawa's test. That was Montreal's test in week one. And
you got to expect them to be a little bit worse than that.
The Ottawa defense or the Ottawa offense is not at full strength yet with Jeremiah Masoli, and they haven't really come together yet. So the Montreal Alouettes, is this their first test? That being said, can we say the Ticats offense is at full strength? I'm not quite sure. But at this point of the season, the Ticats defense has given up the most offensive touchdowns. They've given up 5 rushing touchdowns.
Just to Chad Kelly.
Well, the rushing touchdowns, does that make... And I actually had my mouse over Cody Fajardo too.
Yeah.
He is a threat, I think, through the air. He had a nice pass to Austin Mack for 59 yards last week, but also on the ground. Now, it could get vultured by Dominic Davis coming in and punching those in on the goal line. But Fajardo has the ability to do that as well.
I think you've seen his injury history the last 2 years. If you have the chance to get him out of a quarterback dive situation, you were taking him out. You need to preserve him. If that is who you're going with going forward as your starting quarterback for the next couple of years, then he's absolutely not in short yardage.
There was a few times I wanted to get William Stanback in that lineup and to see from him what we know he is capable of. He had 12.8 fantasy points against Ottawa, 16 carries, 88 yards. I think Montreal might be giving Hamilton a heavy dose of him.
I think so. And, you look at his numbers, average is 11.9, but he only averages 6.6 against Hamilton. I mean, you look at what Hamilton's had in that interior of their defense. They've been tough to run against
for a long time.
And you don't want your guy or your starting running back going in there and getting beat to hell all game. And then in the fourth quarter, when you need him, he's not there because you're on your second and third string guy because he's so beat up. But they can use him in other ways. And you talk about that front seven, how good they are, and stopping the run. They can also get to the quarterback.
Yeah,
which opens up a lot of that swing and screen pass to relieve the pressure. You can see Stanback used that way, kind of like an extension of the run game. But at the same time, if there's pressure, Cody Fajardo can scramble out. So it's kind of a catch-22. You don't know which way they're going to go. It all depends on scheme and what they want to do that week.
Ottawa got to Fajardo 5 times in week 1. Are the Ticats going to get to him here on Friday Night Football? I'm intrigued by Austin Mack of the Alouettes. We don't know
16 points.
Who's going to fill in the shoes of Geno Lewis, who went to
Jay
Edmonton,
Quinicki,
who off to Saskatchewan. Now, he did have, you're right, 16 points in week 1. That's not even a touchdown. That's 4 catches, 120 yards. I think we'll see. I want to see it again. He's less than $5,000 in fantasy. But if Fajardo's looking his way in week 1,
why wouldn't he be in week 2?
Might be looking his way here against Hamilton. I'm very intrigued on him. Hamilton is also worst of opposing yards per play. Over 7 yards a play they're giving up so far this season.
And Tunde Adeleke is questionable.
Man.
So another secondary that's a little beat up coming into week 3. Like, there is a chance Fajardo could put up some numbers like my entire fantasy roster. Yes, I said it. I'm not letting the computer pick for me anymore. My entire fantasy roster could change before I go to bed tonight.
I've been playing with mine, fantasy roster, I should say.
Family show, Travis. Family show.
There's some heavy hitters that I think Hamilton wants to get going. Tim White, Duke Williams, obviously. But I'm intrigued by Keandre Smith. And I'm kind of looking Terry Godwin's way a little bit. He had 4 catches last week. Are they going to be able to get him the ball against the Alouettes? This is a really intriguing
James Butler,
game.
too. Is Hamilton going to keep running the football?
We got to mention him. He had double-digit carries in both of the games so far this year.
Rushing touchdowns in both of those games.
Yes. Will the touchdown streak continue for James Butler? He had 7 catches last week as well. And with Matthew Schultz in there, maybe they get him just as involved, if not a little bit more.
Well, and if they are going to get him involved, and it seems like they've kind of not dedicated themselves to it, but it's now part of the game plan. I think a lot of that's to do with Bo Levi coming from a system like Calgary, where they always had, they have 3 number ones. When it comes to the running back position, you got 3 guys that could start in this league. It feels like Butler is averaging 13.3, and all these numbers are really coming from his time with BC. But I mean, put up 13.3 points per game in his career and averaged against Montreal. Montreal's defense, we don't know exactly what it is. It's going to be better than what it was against Ottawa, but how much better? Both these teams seem to be searching for an identity right now. And I think if James Butler can ground and pound and get Schultz some space, and get second and shorts, then I just don't see why you would go away from him.
The Ticats have run into some injury problems, not just with Tunde Adeleke and Bo Levi Mitchell, but Joel Figueroa is out. Omar Bayless is out. Coulter Woodmansey is out. So there's a couple key injuries on the offensive line. They have activated a veteran offensive lineman, Chris Van Zyl. He did have
Chris Van Turnstile.
A limited practice day on Wednesday, but we know how important that offensive line is, and I just know that Friday night we're going to learn a lot about these two teams. I think Montreal is pretty comfortable being in the underdog role, and a lot of people have written them off this year. Hamilton has all the pressure on them. It's their home opener. It's another
More
Grey
pressure
Cup
than a sub 12,000 feet down.
Oh boy, another Grey Cup year in Hamilton. They're feeling it. I think Steinauer's feeling it. I think everybody is.
That's the thing. Like I mentioned, how far do you want to drop back in this race for a playoff spot in the East when it's super gettable? You are hosting the Grey Cup. You have been in the Grey Cup the last two before the previous one, before this last one. You lost at home. Like this is your redemption story, and you can't come into the season starting 0-3. You just can't. That is a really big hole to dig out of Toronto. If they are what they look like, good luck.
Good luck to anyone, because
but if that's what Hamilton is, then they don't have a shot beating Toronto.
And I know this is a completely different division, but the way Saskatchewan looked last week, it looks like it could just be two East teams in the playoffs again.
Two West. Oh yeah. It's no, I see what you mean.
Yeah. So sorry. Another the crossover happening. That's in play.
Yeah.
The Ticats need to get on the board and into the win column here right away. Calgary Stampeders 3.5-point favorites over the Saskatchewan Roughriders. The over/under at 45.5. We talk about intriguing games. I think
this is your game of the week.
Man, well, I thought that too, but there's BC Winnipeg, so
it's
a
that was only week. A game. That was only 2 games ago, and I already forgot about it.
So here's the stat: through 2 games, the Calgary Stampeders do not have a sack. If they're not able to get to Trevor Harris,
he's putting up 400 yards again.
This game could fall out of Calgary's hands.
Mm-hmm. And they're at home.
Yes.
And if that happens again, if we go 3 straight weeks without a sack, those fans are going to let them know.
Oh yeah.
And it'll be great television.
From what I'm seeing, they're expecting over 25,000 in Calgary, so a good crowd, a lot better than the home opener there. I know those Cowtown fans get pretty fired up when the green and white want to come and invade the stadium, and I think sometimes they show up to boo the Riders more than to cheer the Stamps, but that's okay.
That sounds about right. There's not much to cheer for in Calgary lately, so why not just boo the other team?
For several years, they stopped doing the Rider Stamps games on a Saturday evening. Because
it's too much.
But here we are, Saturday evening at
you idiot. Stimpy, you idiot. Yeah, I am really upset I'm going to be at Waskesiu. But this is I'm going to have it PVR'd, obviously. I just want something to happen.
Yeah.
Some fireworks.
I've been to a few of those games on a Friday or a Saturday night where you can see, because it's a sea of red and green, and then the police are wearing these bright yellow vests. So
it's like a soccer game. When does Calgary or Winnipeg, those are really only 2, maybe Edmonton, but even then, when is it going to turn into home area and away area? And it's not just going to be a free-for-all for tickets.
Because about 10, 15 years ago, it was the height of drunkenness in the stand. Well, and also streakers. There was the streaker era.
Yeah. I like how we don't even discuss football when it comes to CFL eras.
I'm just, the fact that
there was the our balls are bigger era.
Yeah.
The streaker era, the drunkest fans on the planet era.
I remember one day, this is probably 12 years ago, the Calgary baseball team, I can't even remember if it was the Cannons, maybe it was
the summer college league or the Canadian Professional
League.
Back when if the catcher was on base with 2 outs, he got a pinch runner.
So the ballpark is right by the Stampeder McMahon Stadium. So they had a rider day in the park. So we go to the ball game, and I ended up in the paper. I don't know if I had my phone, I could show you the picture on the broadcast, but I'm wearing a Pilsner cowboy hat in the ballpark, and I'm just blowing the vuvuzela. Like, Stampeder fans were so mad. Jim Hobson threw out the first pitch. Gainer's running the bases. This is in Calgary. After the game, they kind of turned the ballpark into a party and shipped in flats of Pilsner.
Did they put the game on the big screen?
No, we get ripped and then go to the game.
Also, they would have the game like early afternoon, and the kickoff is at 8:00. So you're all just piled.
Oh,
that's my dream. That's my dream.
My sister was my DD.
Oh, yeah, because she's a great driver.
That night, I remember playing road hockey in the McMahon Stadium parking lot after the game until about 1 a.m.
She was super happy, I bet.
Oh, she was just not impressed, but
she has never been impressed with us. So let's be real.
That's what can happen a Saturday night at McMahon Stadium.
And you're not even in Sudbury.
Great Stompin' Tom reference. Doesn't get much better than that. I was intrigued by Jake Mayer in this one as well because of what Zach Collaros did to the Rough Rider defense and their inability to shut down some of those bomber receivers. There's some talent in the Stampeder receiving corps. Reggie Bagleton. I'm intrigued by Trey Odoms-Dukes. You will see that because he is...
Who is that?
That's a great discussion because last week on the show I was talking
You could have told me.
I was talking about some receivers that I think maybe could be poised for a breakout. Odoms-Dukes being one of them. He was with the Stamps last year. Coxie in Toronto being one of them. He was with the Argos last year. And the face you briefly made, you're like, what are you talking about?
A rookie having a, No, he just changed his name, and because it's CFL, nobody tells us. Because there's no stats anywhere to be found.
Yeah.
I got my laptop back. I'm going through it. I'm like, Duke. Huh. And I go and I look, and he's got stats, and I read up. Oh, those are the same stats as this. And then those last four letters of his first name were TRES, so he just changed it to Trey. I'm like,
yeah.
And I don't know where the Odoms come from.
Now, through 2 weeks, he's got almost 31 fantasy points, 30.9. He had a touchdown in week 1, 7 catches against BC, 3 catches, 54 yards in the 2-point conversion against Ottawa last week. Saskatchewan had trouble covering the Winnipeg receivers, and
there's 800 of them.
Gave up some big plays. I think they were able to find some soft spots in the zones there. Calgary might be able to do that too. And remember last year, Malik Henry lit up 2 teams. It was Edmonton and it was Saskatchewan.
Yeah. Could
he be poised for a big game?
Well, and you look at Bagleton, Malik Henry, Trey Odoms-Dukes, Luther Hakunavanu. Like,
nailed it.
There's 4 guys that you could argue, if you can double cover, you probably should take a crack at it.
Yep.
You're not going to double cover 4 guys. It's just it's not something you're going to do. So you have to pick your poison. Malik Henry, killed the Riders last year, so that has to be a point of emphasis. But you have Reggie Bagleton, that also has to be a point of emphasis. Like, that's going to leave guys like Trey Odoms-Dukes and Luther chances, I think, to not necessarily, not just in this game, but for the season, because those other 2 are going to be able to draw so much attention.
I want to see.
Nick Marshall is on one of them. Just book him for a touchdown.
No, we've been talking about running back usage. Dedrick Mills is that guy against Ottawa. 19 carries, 102 yards, and a touchdown. Saskatchewan's rush defense is actually pretty good, but any defense, I think, can be broken down if you run at them over and over again, especially with a guy like Dedrick Mills, who runs extremely angry.
11.5 points per game in his career, 16.1 against the Riders. Peyton Logan averaging 10 in his career. Like, there's two guys right there that can put up numbers, put up yards, and beat the hell out of your defense. Kadeem Carey, I'm assuming on the 6th game, not playing. So it's going to be one of those two guys, and they might not be, depending on how it goes, you might not see one guy get 20 carries, another guy kind of spell them out. They might go back and forth because that interior line and interior defense of the Riders is so physical that guys got a good chance of getting beat up going in there.
Now, as we're recording this, Reggie Bagleton has not practiced yet. Malik Henry didn't practice.
Last 2 days. Yeah.
Yes, and Malik Henry didn't practice Tuesday. He was back on the field on Wednesday. If Bagleton's not in there, I think that adds value to Odom's Dukes, and it adds value to Malik Henry. But the Riders are very banged up. And I talked about Dedrick Mills running at teams and the Riders having a decent run defense, but a big part of that is Anthony Lanier being back in the middle of that defensive line alongside Micah Johnson. But Lanier hasn't practiced this week with a foot injury. DeMarcus Christmas hasn't practiced this week. And then all the injuries on the back end of the Rough Rider defense. Rodney Clemens, Roland Milligan, Jaden Dalkey. They're just
Dalkey
limping.
And Milligan have been lights out to start the year.
They're limping into Calgary, man.
Yeah. And if they're not ready to go and they can't play, that's a huge loss. And if they can play, but they're not 100%, like, I don't know how much that's going to affect. I mean, Dalkey as a safety, he's your last line where he's not really going to be covering too much. He can play a little bit of zone, but a guy like Roland Milligan, like, if he's not 100%, I don't know if you can get him out there.
That is a big concern for Saskatchewan going to Calgary. Even some of the special teams players, Canadians, depth guys, they've been injured, and we've seen what happens when you get the backup special teams guys in. Janarian Grant breaks 15 tackles and takes it to the house. So
there's only 12 guys.
You got to watch for Peyton Logan. He's got to, I think, hold on to the ball. Sometimes it's an adventure with the fumbles a little bit. But if the Rider offensive line is able to protect Trevor Harris, and we know he's able to get away the ball quickly, so he might be,
and efficiently.
He might almost be an addition to the offensive line indirectly, right?
It's like Marty Brodeur being the third defenseman.
Yeah. Especially on the penalty kill.
They had to add a rule to stop it. So, but yeah, he gets the ball out quick. He's not always, like, it always felt like Cody Fajardo was looking for that deep threat, because he had Shaq Evans. Trevor Harris is looking for the open guy. Like, and it's not that, like, every play is designed to have somebody as your number one guy, but he reads through his progression so fast, and he delivers the ball so accurately that those windows are there when it doesn't look like they are. And, like, over 70%, and he put up 400 yards. Like, come on. And as an O-line, you love that. Because you're not getting beat up for 5-6 seconds, and all of a sudden Fajardo's over there.
Yeah. You know where he's going to be, Harris.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For 98% of the snaps.
Now, I'm intrigued by a lot of that receiving core in Saskatchewan. Sean Bain making his return to Calgary, hit over 100 yards last week against Winnipeg, but we're coming off a hat trick for Samuel Emelis, and we're coming off a nice game for Tevin Jones, getting onto the roster with Darrell Walker hitting the 6th game. Who is going to be Trevor Harris's favorite target in Calgary? Because
is Jake Wieneke the easy answer because of past history?
You know what?
And familiarity.
We haven't seen the best from Touchdown Jake.
Even last year, like, it definitely wasn't Touchdown Jake.
Right.
Did he have one?
Right.
So, Sean Bain, kind of a coming out party last week. Same with Emelis. I think teams are still going to focus a little bit on Jake Wieneke just because of past performances, and they know what he can do. But like you said, it's going to open up the door for guys like Tevin Jones and Sean Bain. And I think they're going to have really good opportunity this week to put up some numbers. Winnicky, if you are looking at it, 10.4 in his career, 12.9 against Calgary. Not huge numbers, but I mean, he's not, going out there and getting 30 yards and that's it. He's putting up points. Tevin at 9.7 and Sean Bain 8.3. They haven't played Calgary yet, so you have to see what they're going to do against the likes of Trey Roberson and guys like that. But there is a potential there, depending on matchups. You can get away from some guys and put up some big numbers.
There's a danger that Frankie Hickson misses the game for the Riders, so it should be the Jamal Morrow show. I think the Riders will tell you they did not give Jamal Morrow the ball enough against Winnipeg. He only had 6 carries for 37 yards. He did have a catch for 17 yards.
And it's not like they got down, or like they weren't down big. Like they were up 7-3 at one point.
Right.
And
I think
kind of abandoned it.
Especially on the road, probably get your running game rolling against the Stamps. Easier said than done with the likes of Micah Awe and Cameron Judge in that linebacking core.
Mike Rose.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if you can get that ground game established and get it going, it's going to quiet the crowd. You can demoralize an offense and demoralize the defense and demoralize the crowd and get them out of it a little bit if you're able to get 5-6 yards of carry. That being said, you have to commit to it. You can't go away from it because it works for a little bit and then 2 plays in a row it doesn't. You have to commit to it and keep going back. Whether or not the coaching staff and the offense want to do that is a thing to be seen. But I mean, it is Jamal Morrow. There is a chance where he could put up 2 touchdowns and 100 yards. I know Calgary's run defense is tough, but I mean, Jamal Morrow, just volume. If you can get him the carries, he's going to produce. At least that's how it feels anyway.
Yeah, the Toronto Argonauts are 6.5-point favorites going into Edmonton with the over-under set at 44.5.
But Toronto might just hit the over.
Now, Edmonton's performance against BC last week, the leash on Taylor Cornelius is shrinking. If he struggles in the first half, which is a distinct possibility.
I was going to say, don't say distinct possibility because I think it's a lock.
Do we see a Trey Ford, a Kai Loxley come out for the second half? It might happen, I think.
I think it might be before that. Like, you look at what Toronto's offense did last week. Against Hamilton. Edmonton is going to be in tough against this offense, and their defense isn't exactly healthy either. On Edmonton's side, Cornelius is going to be leaned upon to keep throwing the ball, and he hasn't proved enough that it's a viable option right now.
Right.
I just think that Toronto's defense is going to make him look terrible again, and people are going to get more free tickets.
Now, yeah, you're right. 18 home losses in a row for the Edmonton Elks. It almost seems like
Enoch said they are going to break it, but just
this season,
just not this week.
It just feels like every game at home is now like a desperate,
2 a.m. at the bar.
Win.
Yeah. I need this.
Take it any way that you can get it. And it just feels like this might not be the week. What's a key to win for the Edmonton Elks? I say you have to get Geno Lewis double-digit targets. Against Saskatchewan in week 1,
it's not just double-digit targets. They got to be good targets.
Because I was just going to say, because against Saskatchewan in week 1, a lot of those were getting forced in there on double teams. And like if it's a one-on-one deep ball, you're throwing to Geno every chance you get.
Yeah, you have to. Their key to success is quarterback play because it hasn't been good.
Yeah,
it hasn't. Whether it's Taylor Cornelius or a backup not getting into the end zone 3 plays in a row, they haven't had the production and the efficiency and the consistency they need from that position. And until that changes or gets better, they're not winning a football game.
The protection hasn't been good for Cornelius either. He only had Geno Lewis only had 3 targets in week 2 against BC, 1 catch for 9 yards.
Yeah, that's not good enough.
No, not for your highest paid receiver in the CFL. You must get him the ball, and they also need
The
to
opportunities
protect
also
the
have to
ball.
be there, and
Yeah,
it's what when you have Taylor Cornelius back there, you don't think that teams are going to be like, okay, we're just going to shut down Geno Lewis and we'll go from there.
right.
That's literally the game plan playing Edmonton right now. You shut down Geno, and if they are going to run, that's your defensive line and your middle linebacker's responsibility. They're going to run Kevin Brown.
And I'm a fan of Kevin Brown, but 2 games this season, 2 fumbles this season. That cannot happen here against Toronto. We saw what they did against Hamilton. They took advantage of turnovers. And if Edmonton's going to give them the ball, it seems like Toronto's just going to go and take advantage of that. And they've got options. It seems like maybe they're going to have Andrew Harris, and it feels kind of weird to talk about because of all of those seasons of getting the ball 20 times a game with Winnipeg. It takes its toll, man. It totally does. But AJ Ouellette, he had 13 carries, 85 yards, and a catch against Hamilton. Get him.
And then they bring in Andrew to finish off a touchdown drive.
Exactly. So if you've got those options,
then you have DeVaris Daniels and you have Curly Gittens Jr., although he was limited in practice this week. Both those guys in almost double digits, 12.2 and 9.9. DeMonte Coxey had a hell of a game last week. Like, there's just so many options on the offensive side. Like, the defense can be under so much pressure that that might be the saving grace for Edmonton, that their offense might not be on the field much. Because it'd be a lot of 2-0.
Now, what we saw from Edmonton against BC was the old 3-man pressure and the 9 guys in coverage. We'll see what Toronto does. If they run at them, that might be the way to succeed there. Now, if they don't, Chad Kelly might struggle finding open receivers with that coverage.
Yeah. With him not being, like, this is what, his 3rd start now?
Yeah.
It might that is definitely a viable option for your defense. On the other hand, we've seen what he did in the Grey Cup, and he's mobile. So,
yep, exactly.
Are you going to do that and maybe have a spy? That's an option. Do you send 4 maybe and try to collapse the pocket a little quicker and drop less guys? Like, I don't hate the 3 and 9. At the same time, though, it's one of those things that can really bite you when you got a guy like Chad Kelly.
Here's a prop bet: Chad Kelly rushing touchdowns 1.5.
Actually,
is that rushing on Blitz Picks?
It might be.
Oh, does he rush more touchdowns than passing touchdowns? I think yes.
Oh, I think he rushes more.
Yeah.
I think they'll get. I think there'll be a lot of them getting down to the goal line or getting deep into Edmonton territory and giving it to AJ and Andrew. And if they don't get in, and it's a 1st and goal from the 1, then I think it's a no-brainer.
And if you talk to fans in Edmonton, they're very familiar with Andrew Harris having a lot of success throughout his career against the Edmonton Elks.
With a little bit of help. You think I was going to
from
do
his
it,
friends? There's a nice Joe Cocker reference, right? Edmonton
got to get up pretty early to get those by me.
Does have some injury issues with some veterans here. Ed Gainey hasn't practiced. Manny Arsenault hasn't practiced. Otherwise, I mean, they are kind of healthy. But here's the thing. The Argos are going to be adding Jamal Peters, 2022's interception leader, returning from the NFL. It looks like he's been practicing this week. That's the matchup here. Can the Elks offense succeed against the Argo defense? And I don't even know that the Elks need to put up 30 points. They just need to stay on, like, sustain some drives, because last week they actually had some good field position. The defense was
nothing with it,
able to put them into positions to succeed against the Lions, and nothing happened. The Argos
Weird.
defense.
Chris Jones' team, their defense is way ahead of the offense early in the tenure.
And the Argos defense is a top 3 defense in the Canadian Football League.
They've played one game.
But I don't think they've changed all that much from last year.
No, I don't think. Yeah, that's a fair point. That's a very fair point. So Arsenal out, like that just means you were keying in on Gino so hard.
It's just and I know Gino's a veteran, but the leadership I think that Manny brings, the effort level that he puts on to stay onto the field, the injuries he's returned from, the heart that the Manny show shows, that is an omission a little bit from that Elks offense. Yeah.
And it also gives one less weapon.
Yeah.
Like the offensive weapon that he is. He's not what he was in his days in BC, but still a threat. And that Toronto defense now is one less thing to worry about. But that being said, Gino 12.9 in his career, 18.9 against Toronto. He's lit up the Argos. Kyron Moore 11.7 and 13.7 against the Argos. Dylan Mitchell 11.5 in his career, 5.9, a little bit of a down spiral there. And Stephen Dunbar Jr. 11.4 in his career and 8.9. So they have the guys that can put up numbers. It's just Cornelius has to get them the ball.
Couple guys familiar with that Toronto defense. Dunbar, a Ticat, played them a lot last year, and Gino and Alouette played them a lot as well. Now, I guess that's another guy we should talk about, Dylan Mitchell, Ty, because I had high hopes for him coming into this year, especially his performance last year as a rookie. Any guesses on his receiving yards through 2 games, Ty?
69.
-4.
Yeah, because he had one game with -5. So yeah, like that's so bad.
He has,
and there's no yards after catch on that. Like the ball was thrown 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage.
He's 3 catches, -4 yards through 2 games.
Yeah. Is that on him or is that on Cornelius? Or maybe the other receivers blocking for him on screen passes.
All the talent in the world on the Elks offense, but if you can't get these guys the ball,
there's one spot that doesn't have that hasn't proven itself yet, and I don't know. Everybody would like talking to a couple people last year with Cornelius. It might have been last year was his first year. They're like, oh, like they saw some stuff that they really liked. I'm like, I don't see what you guys are seeing. I see a guy who isn't gonna cut it right now. And if you want to get out of the basement, it's not how you do it.
He's got a big arm.
Yeah.
But how do you rein it in? That kind of reminds me of like a Michael Bishop. The guy could throw it 80 yards.
Candy Maldonado throwing from right field and never hitting the cutoff man or the catcher, hitting the backstop.
Like, where's it going to go? I don't know, but he could throw it far.
Yeah.
So that'll be a fascinating game at Commonwealth Stadium. I think it's 90s night in Edmonton.
Starter jackets galore.
Yes. What else about the 90s? My whole life kind of revolves around wrestling, and
Attitude
90s
era.
Wrestling was just awesome. So
Razor Ramon and Shawn Michaels at was that SummerSlam?
WrestleMania 10, the ladder match.
The ladder match, yeah.
All the good stuff happened in the 90s.
I guess the Oilers did. Yeah, the Oilers did win a Stanley Cup in the 90s, technically. The Jays won 2 World Series. The Expos got robbed of one, which is great.
You hate them because they were a National League or what? Wow.
You made me say it. I wasn't going to say it, but you made me say it.
Here's my fantasy lineup for this.
You're going to have to elk that out.
Yeah, I'm elking it. Here's the fantasy lineup for me for this week. I'm loading up on Bombers, actually. I believe in the Lions defense. I just think the firepower of the Bombers, they're going to be able to score touchdowns either way. Zach Collaros is my quarterback. Johnny Augustine, my running back. Dedrick Mills, my other running back. Nick Dembski at receiver. He's also my captain. Alexander Hollins is my other receiver. So I'm really relying on some lot of points out of Winnipeg and BC
on a Thursday night game.
Yeah. Now it's a slightly shorter week for BC, but Winnipeg's they've had 6 days, so I think they'll be okay. Trey Odom's Dukes is my flex, and I have the Ticats defense only because they're the cheapest option, and I expect them to. Hey, if they can get 5 sacks on Cody Fajardo like Ottawa did, I think that'll be okay numbers there. That's $300 left over, Ty.
So I got tired of getting stuck with Tyree Adams at the quarterback position with the auto picks that the computer gives you. So I actually filled out a lineup this week.
Nice.
Out of just sheer pissed offedness. Chad Kelly, also my captain. AJ Olette, William Stanback, Dalton Schoen, Aiden Everhart. I just think there's got Lucky Whitehead can't get all the targets, and he dropped a touchdown last week. Like, he is involved in the offense.
They're high on him in BC.
They're high on him. Mario Alford at the flex, and the Toronto Argos defense.
I wanted to get them in. I got
$600 left over.
All right, so pick 'em here. I'm going Winnipeg, Hamilton, Calgary, Toronto.
Winnipeg, Hamilton, Saskatchewan, Toronto.
That Saturday night game. Oh boy. I got a ticket.
How many undefeated teams are there going to be at the end of the week?
I saw that question. I say 1.
I said 2.
So Montreal has to win. Oh, no, Toronto. I'm going to change my pick to 2 then.
You're welcome.
You can rate, review, and subscribe to 2 and Out on your favorite podcatcher. You can subscribe and leave a comment on YouTube as well. Hey, maybe let us know who you think are going to win the games in week 3 up on our YouTube channel. And of course, you can support us on Patreon. We got to give a shout out to Philip, Sheldon Jones, Michael Walker, Chris Harold.
I'm surprised Sheldon knows how to use Patreon.
He does. And then we've got Lawrence.
And we didn't even get a phone call to ask for help.
Cole, Nick, Dwayne, Kirsten, all members of our great Patreon community. Thank you so much for supporting the show, because let's face it, with no sponsors, we actually pay to do the show.
Well, you pay.
Hosting costs, all sorts of stuff.
I just asked new phone who dis.
And our computers are failing, so hopefully
our pets' heads are falling off.
Things are going down. You're our only hope, patrons. Thank you so much. Another Star Wars reference. Look at that.
It's the same one you made last week.
The exact same one. Enjoy week 3 in the CFL. We will talk to you next week to talk about what's guaranteed to be some craziness going on.
Thanks for listening. Find more great shows like this at CF Pod Network on Twitter.